Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to this week's episode of Not D&D, brought to you by EN World. As always, I am your host, Jessica, and joining us this week, we have two guests. We have Sebastian and Jordan from Hit Point Press. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks for having us, Jess.
Yes, thank you for having us.
You're very welcome. The reason I have you on is to talk about the upcoming Shift role-playing game, which I saw upcoming on Kickstarter, was very interested in, and wanted to get you on to talk about it for my own personal interest, to be honest, and here to share it with everyone else as well. So thanks for coming along. If you're watching live, thank you very much. Welcome. We will be taking questions, so you can get involved throughout the stream. Just pop them in the comments. And if you're listening to the podcast later, all the links to everything we're talking about will be in the show notes, so you can just click through there. But before we start talking about Shift, about role-playing games, I'd love to talk to you both a little bit and get to know you a little bit more. So how about you introduce yourself and what you do at Hit Point Press? Who would like to go first?
Jordan, it should probably be you.
I don't know why I have that particular honor, but I'll take it. Hi, I'm Jordan. I'm one of the content leads at Hit Point Press. I was basically the first employee that we ever had, and I've been doing that for 8 or so years. My job has evolved a lot, but now it's landed mostly on a lot of writing and game design. I've helped usher in our D&D products, like our Big Bad booklets and Humblewood campaign settings. But Shift is something I'm particularly proud of and excited to get out there. So it's my first kind of original game design that I've collaborated on. So I'm excited to share it with the world.
So this is a little bit of your baby we're going to be talking about. Is that?
Yeah, I parented it with my friend Graham, who used to work with us. A very good game designer and dreamer of big ideas, and so we sort of tossed the idea around a little bit back and forth, and so it'll be both of our names on the front of the book, but I'm just sort of taking it to the finish line as far as the completion goes.
Fabulous. And Sebastian, how about you? How are you involved with Hit Point Press?
All right. Hello, I'm Sebastian. I am the community manager and publishing coordinator over at Hit Point Press. I started in content with Jordan, and then I moved to be doing things more on the community side. I've been there for about 3-ish years, I want to say. And we are super excited about Shift, being our original system, being our first one.
Absolutely. I mean, on Not D&D, we love an original system, as you can probably guess. So that's why we had to have you on to talk about it. But I mean, you two have very interesting, obviously careers in role-playing games. And I know a lot of people listening also love games and would be interested in doing something similar. So I don't know if you could talk about how you got started in working in games. Like Sebastian, how did you get started working in role-playing games?
Quite by coincidence, actually. I started originally as a freelancer, and I was working for all sorts of different people on different projects, and I was collaborating on my own community stuff. And I found Hit Point Press because the whole pandemic happened, and I lost my job due to corporate restructuring at the time, and so that gave me a lot of time to experiment with game design. And it was something that I was doing. I was already in a few games with some friends, and it didn't occur to me that this was something that I could do and actually make a living out of. And so I was very lucky to be put in touch with Jordan and to join at Hit Point Press. I'm really happy to be with a Canadian company. So yeah.
Fantastic. And Jordan, what about for you?
Well, I've always been a gamer. I didn't go to school for anything like this. I didn't really see writing and game design in my future when I was a kid. I went to school for animation out of all the possible things. Yeah, drawings instead of writing. And I met Rico, our boss, CEO, I guess, of Hit Point Press. I became friends when I was working at a comic book shop, and he at the time had a sort of game dev studio that he was part of, and so I did a bunch of art animation for Flash games and stuff for him and his company. But on the side, he was working on something called Cartamajigs, which was a real small side gig making accessories for Magic the Gathering. And he needed someone to stuff envelopes for him, and eventually I came on board to do that. And one day he just turned around and asked, is there any other products that you think we should be looking at? And the SRD for Dungeons and Dragons, the open license, came out for 5th edition right around like just a few days before he'd asked me that question. And I said, well, why don't we make accessories? So why don't we make some accessories for D&D? And then it just snowballed from there. Our animated spells did really well. And then all of a sudden we're writing campaign settings and then there was Heckna, and then there was the Big Bad Book and all this kind of stuff. And then it just spiraled out 8 years later. Now we're working on our own system. But yeah, I never planned to sort of be here. The real experience was that I have, 30 years of GMing under my belt to some degree, most of it the past decade. But yeah, I don't want to say it's luck. It's been a lot of hard work to get here, but it was bumping into people who are of the like mind. And like Sebastian said, I try and pass that on to the people that I know to give them the opportunities to work in the biz, because it can be a lot of fun. So
yeah, absolutely. And you said 30 years of playing and running games.
I don't want to get too specific about
Well, to get specific, do you remember the first game that you played?
Well, I remember the first game I tried to play, which was Advanced Dungeons & Dragons. A cousin of mine, I don't know, I was 10 or 11 years old, and he looked at me and he was like, this kid will like these books. And he dropped a bunch of old, well, at the time they weren't that old, D&D books in front of me. But I had no idea. I couldn't wrap my head around how it worked. And I would phone, he was 20 something, and I would phone him asking him to explain the rules for me. And I would left so many messages, and so I never really got, I loved reading them, but I never really understood how to play them. I think when it finally clicked for me, it was probably the Star Wars D6 system.
Oh, nice.
Which is I think that was the first Star Wars RPG that ever, licensed RPG that ever came out. And that kind of opened my brain up probably around 13 or 14 years old. And I started actually designing new races and stuff for it there. So I think I could probably pinpoint my first real passionate interest in RPGs is with the Star Wars D6.
I like that. That's a good one to have. Sebastian, I'll put the same question to you. Do you remember your first role-playing experience?
I do, yes. My first ever game was Pathfinder First Edition. I didn't really, at the time, I didn't understand what a role-playing game was, and I didn't really understand how to play it. I didn't have the rule books, I didn't have dice. It would come to my turn, and it would feel like trying to learn the game all over again because I didn't remember what I was supposed to be doing. I gave it my best shot, but I didn't know what I wanted to play. So, I remember the DM specifically saying, what kind of character do you want? And I was like, well, what are the options? And then he was like, I don't know, do you want to be good at swords? Do you want to be casting spells? And I said, can I do everything? Can I be good at everything? And he was like, yeah, okay, you should play a paladin. I've since learned that is not the class that I should be playing. I've come to understand like what I enjoy as a player. But yeah, I'm glad that I had that experience, and I'm glad that I gave it another shot again, 4 years later. And then after that, it kind of clicked.
Yeah, absolutely. Pathfinder is quite a heavy system to get you started on. Like it's a lot of moving parts there for a new person. This month on Not D&B, we've been looking at games that are kind of accessible for new players with the mechanics, and that segues us really nicely to talking about the Shift RPG, because when I looked through it, it really looked like a lot of the intent was to kind of have that. So Jordan, I don't know if you can talk us through the ideas of Shift RPG. Like, what was your inspiration and context for making the system?
Yeah, so I have to give credit for this back to Graham, of course, Risky Pixels on social media. He loves just sort of like coming up with dice mechanics and probabilities and things involved around probabilities. And so he came to me with this idea of these dice that kind of get worse as you play, to represent things like exhaustion or running out of resources or mana, or however you want to think of it. And I helped him sort of finagle the numbers around a little bit to figure out exactly what would work. And then this is where we came up with the namesake of the game, which is the shifting dice. And we liked it a lot, and we found that it could represent a lot of things in the game without because I do like a lot some crunch in my games, but and Graham would be fine playing a game that was just written on a note card. So this is a middle ground that we kind of came to, where the building block, the trait and the shift die is as bite-sized as you can get, and then then if you want to add something new to the game, you just have to interpret it through the lens of the trait and the shift die, and you can add it in. And so the game is very expandable and very easy to design for, and then also easy to tweak. So I can go over the core mechanic.
Let's do that. Yes, probably best way to.
Everything in the game, whether it's your character's abilities, the vehicles they're driving around in, the monsters they're fighting, whatever, are built out of these traits, which, for those of you familiar with Fate or even a little bit Powered by the Apocalypse kind of games, they're very kind of like simple, bite-sized ideas that describe the things that you can do. The standard kind of for a character in Shift is the equivalent of their basic attributes in D&D would be body, mind, and soul. So those would be what we call your core traits. And each trait is assigned a die, depending on sort of how good you are, or how good you are at using that trait. And the dice in our game go in reverse order. The better dice and the best dice in our game are D4s, and then the worst are D12s, which is counterintuitive to a lot of people, but once you see how it works, it becomes second nature. But really, all you have to think about is the less sides that are on the die, the better chance you have of success. Because to attempt something with a trait, let's say you're using a body trait and it has a D6 associated with it, you want to knock down a door, you'll roll that D6 that's associated with it, and on a 1, 2, or 3, you succeed. And that's why the dice start at the D4 and go down to the D12, because that 1, 2, 3, as a successful result, gets worse the more sides the die has. And then the shifting comes in when you roll the highest result. So if you roll a 6 on a D6, it shifts down to the D8, the next worst die. If you roll 1s, that's critical successes, and you can use those to shift dice back up, or allow your teammates to shift back up. But yes, the shifting down of the dice means that in the case of one of your core traits, like using your body, and you roll the 6 on that D6, it could mean that you got hurt. It could mean that you're getting exhausted and you need to find another way to get through this door, that kind of thing. And everything in the game is built around that. So when you're fighting monsters, they're just a pile of these traits as well that the GM is rolling to interact with you. Yeah,
it makes sense why a D20 is not there, because I think that would just be too harsh odds there. That would really be making it.
It really didn't mean it. Really, it wasn't going to be interesting enough. And the D20 has had its time in the sun, I think, and I'm glad that we don't focus too much on it.
Absolutely. Well, the game really looks like a toolbox to kind of make your own system settings and worlds. Sebastian, you do a lot of obviously community management, so you're speaking to people that are playtesting it. What sort of things are people creating using the system?
People are creating all sorts of things. Yeah, it is designed to do that, as you say. It's designed to be super flexible so that people can imagine their own settings, and it's designed to help with world building so that you can create your own environment with your own kind of personal lore, and do so in a bite-sized way. We have these monthly game jams in our Discord server where Jordan comes up with some prompts and we invite people to create their own worlds. We have a kind of structure built out for it. There's some videos on YouTube as well that kind of walk you through not only how to play the game, but also how to do the world spark.
Created by Sebastian as well as the videos. So.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah. But we've seen everything from from kind of sci-fi to horror to, Southern Gothic. You can really do anything with it. And that's kind of what we're super excited about.
Someone is designing a setting that revolves around a sport, and they've also used Shift to design the rules for the sport so that you can kind of play it like a board game within the game, all using the core mechanics of Shift. It's been really, really cool to see.
Amazing. We've had some chatter in the comments. So someone said they're attending a GameCon next month and no one is running Shift, but they do really want to play it. Maybe they should run a game of it. So are there resources available for people to try it out at the moment?
Their timing is great because our free RPG day content which was available on Free RPG Day in June, has now gone public and is available for free to download on our site, rpgshift.com. You can get all that. And it's specifically designed to sort of teach a GM how to run a one-shot. And there's print and play resources to run it in person. Sebastian and I was helpful and instrumental in helping us get that put together, basically right down to the wire on Free RPG Day. And we heard that there were people running it all over the place, which is great. So yeah, rpgshift.com will have the links to whatever you needed. Perfect.
Yeah.
I just saw them say that they downloaded all the free stuff. So that's great.
Yeah,
that's all you need.
Yeah. Additionally, we also run monthly organized play games run by our Shift GMs, some of whom I can see in the chat. So hello, thank you very much. Every month we have we run tables and we'll put out some time slots, and you can experience Shift, and they're designed to be beginner friendly. So then you can, even if you've never played it before and you're not super confident with the rules, that's ideal, really.
Absolutely. Well, it sounds like the core mechanic is fairly simple to pick up. Like you just explained it very quickly there to me. But Jordan, I know you mentioned there's extra mechanics, so you can kind of adjust the complexity of the games. Do you have any examples of these other mechanics that people could put in? So if somebody's listening to this and they're like, I want a little bit more structure in my games, what sort of things are available?
So as our Discord folks know, because we've released some playtest material to the Discord exclusively, there are what I call them dials. They're building blocks that you can adjust, that the core rulebook will provide you. The core rulebook will have some sort of micro settings in it, but it will focus on adapting to the game to the setting that you want to play in. And so when it comes to adding more crunch or even simplifying certain things, the sort of currently anyway, the dials that you can tweak are things like how difficult it is to travel your world, how difficult it is to rest and heal, and those revolve around the level of resource management that your players are going to have to deal with. If you're at the most difficult level of travel, then they're going to have to keep track of what resources they have in their pack. That's going to limit how far they can travel. We use a system of called legs. You decide how many legs the journey has, and for each of those legs, you're going to be each character is going to have to expend some resources. So you're going to have to plan out the trip and how far you're going to get. Very favorable for the hex crawl fans out there in the world. I think it'll be useful if you want to play with that kind of mechanic. And then the same goes for resting, where and then travel can be dialed. We go from the way we usually describe it is like you go from Saturday morning cartoon to Elden Ring, like as far as the complexity of things. And so you can easily the game supports easily just smash cutting to whatever location you are in, and you can ignore the travel completely. And resting follows the same suit. The game works great if you want to just play, like a happy-go-lucky kind of mech game where everything gets repaired between sessions and all your dice reset back up to their maximums. Or you can dial it all the way to the more difficult mode, where as I mentioned, everything in the game is built out of these traits, and that includes locations. Locations have their own sets of traits that kind of give the GM tools to quickly figure out, well, what are the defenses of this place if the players go rogue and want to start attacking the guards, or what kind of what's the economy like here? Will they be able to find the item that they're looking for? And they've got traits with dice that they can roll to determine that, or have the location attack the players or attack another location.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, they're basically they're little characters unto themselves. And in like the most complex resting, the kind of economic strength of the location factors into just how good your die can shift back up. And so if the place that you're visiting is a one-horse town and doesn't have a lot going on, then you're not going to be able to get all the resources you need to sort of fill the tanks. And so you have to start considering, well, what's our home base, or can we improve the home base, this place, till because in the same way that your dice can shift up, you can work to shift up the dice of the locations that you're visiting. And there's, I would call that a whole sub game that you could play to kind of use the traits to flesh out the world, and then have players really thinking about their journey and where they're traveling to. Because if they know they're going somewhere that doesn't have a lot of resources, they're going to have to plan around that. And then the rest of the core rules just has a ton of advice on just generally how to tweak things. We've got, through our playtesting with the Discord, we're going to have 3 different ways to 3 different kind of difficulty levels of getting a critical success, because the Discord, the old rules is that sometimes you get to roll more than 1 die, and the original rules were that all the dice had to show a 1 to get a crit. And we've had feedback on both sides saying they loved it and they hate it. The game works great if every 1 counts as a crit. So that's sort of going to be the middle ground, but you can make it harder, or you could make it easier. So yeah, the system is really going to be about making a game that works for you, that fits into the shift rule set.
Fabulous. Well, in terms of like setting, like I said, this doesn't feel like it has its own kind of setting, because it's the idea is your creativity to put on it. So how does that translate in character creation, Sebastian? Like, what sort of characters or beings are people making to play the game that you're seeing?
Yeah, so the fun thing about this is that the setting influences what kinds of character options are available. So it will be tailored to the setting. We have a setting called Dorado Station, and that's a kind of sci-fi, it's a blend of like kind of sci-fi western, I would say, and that's kind of set on it's a bit of a desolate planet, and so a lot of the character creation options are designed so that you can solve the kinds of problems that you would find in that setting.
Sure. Fab,
yeah, we distribute these settings in little bite-sized forms called World Sparks, which Sebastian has helped develop considerably as well. And a World Spark is not a full-blown campaign setting with all the lore and everything you would need, but it does come with everything that you would want in order to get your first session off the ground. And one of the things that is included in it is 10 traits. We call them example traits because that's not the limit. Shift is quite easy to create your own traits for on the fly. But we list, so Dorado Station, for example, is our free RPG Day release as well. And it has 10 focus traits, which are like the special ability traits, as suggestions that fit the setting and that people can use or riff on or modify. Or just have inspire their own. And the core rules is going to have release with a bunch of these World Sparks, and GMs and players alike will be able to mix and match between them, or just go their own. When we're doing playtesting or when we're introducing the game, so like Sebastian and I both run Dorado Station for different groups at cons and things. We start with having people create all of their abilities and everything from scratch, because it's the strength of the game. We feel the system. We only pull out the list of traits if someone's struggling, or just some people's brains aren't wired to sit down and invent everything from scratch, and that's absolutely fine. Sure. And so that's where the World Spark comes in. But we find, I would say more than half of the time, people love just naming what their trait is, and then picking a couple of keywords which kind of help define it, and they're off to the races.
Yeah, I mean, there's people in the comments now coming up with ideas, and it makes sense you saying the World Spark, because someone commented, "Oh, join the Discord and build a World Spark for that idea." So I can see people in the comments literally now talking about ideas. So I'm seeing that happen in real time. Absolutely. So in terms of the game, it sounds like it's pretty far down in development. Like you're still playtesting it, but when is the game going to be actually coming out on Kickstarter? I know there's a pre-launch page up at the moment, but what's the plan?
You want to take this one, Sebastian?
Yeah, sure. So right now we're in the phase of we've done a lot of playtesting, but we're really looking to introduce new players to the game. So that's kind of what we're trying to achieve with the with the monthly like organized play games. But as for Shift itself on Kickstarter, that we're expecting that in early October. So please do page for more news.
Yeah, fantastic. And we have had a question in the comments as well related to Kickstarter, I believe. And they're asking, saying that there is going to be a regular version and a deluxe version. So they're asking what separates kind of the two.
We're not a company that kind of gatekeeps content behind a fancier version, so it really is just going to be a different cover with a little bit like more fancy, sparkly treatment. But the interior, the interior, the only difference that might happen is sometimes we do a slightly different end pages on the very inside of the cover. But the actual content is going to be the same in the book. The book will be the same size as well, and both books will be up to the same quality. One will just have more shiny on the cover.
Absolutely, thanks. I hope that answers your question in the comments there. I mean, we've chatted through a lot of the game today. If people have questions, like maybe if they're catching up or they're listening to the podcast, where's the best place to get in touch with you to ask any questions they have? I'm assuming the Discord, because we talked about that a fair bit.
Yeah, you'd be right. The Discord is a really good place for that. Please do join the Discord. It's very active, and both Jordan and myself are around, and you can ping us, and we will. Yeah, we'd love to talk about the game with you.
And we'll shout out the members of the Discord community. Some of them are here watching right now, and they are. If Sebastian and I can't get to an answer, one of our great community members will point you in the direction. They'll help you find all of the resources that we've distributed for the Discord only, all that kind of stuff. And so, yeah, it's really cool seeing people come up with new ideas, people joining the Discord just to learn, just finding out that they can play the game there. So, yeah, we had some games being GM'd this weekend, and I think we're going to do at least monthly games, if not more. So.
Fabulous. If people want to try out the game, Discord is the best place to go. I noticed you've also got all the usual social media as well, so I'll put them on the screen for Blue Sky and for Instagram, and the links are in the show notes there. So if anyone wants to click through there, if you don't use Discord or for whatever reason. But yeah, I'm really excited for Shift to come out. I was really excited to see the pre-launch page and learn more about it. So thank you for coming on and talking with me more about it. Before you go, I would like to ask you the final question, which I ask is, do you have any recommendations for any other tabletop RPGs? And the rules are, it can't be a game that you've made, and it can't be D&D, of course. So what are your things?
Well, one of the first games I think that Sebastian and I ever played together was Heart, The City Beneath, from Rowan, Rook, and Deckard. So I think we were chatting about it before we started, and I think that's probably, you should check that out. That's from your side of the pond. Rowan, Rook, and Deckard are on your side of the pond, I believe, Jess. And
they are, yes, yeah.
Yeah, we're big fans. Do you have any favorite things you would like about Heart there, Sebastian?
Yeah, honestly, the setting is just so good. Like they do a really good job with balancing, like, you know, kind of gross body horror, but with kind of absurdist humor, and I appreciate the way they write it. There are definitely elements of Heart and Shift's DNA in the sense that that you know, I think the keywords are kind of hard. You know, would you say, Jordan? Like,
yeah, I think as an inspiration, Heart just kind of inspired me in all kinds of the different ways that you can create games and have resolution mechanics in games that don't that sort of buck the trends, the usual trends of just rolling higher than a number or whatever. Yeah, it's a game that integrates its setting and its system together super well, and uses the system to describe the setting as opposed to overloading you with too much content. And that's going to be a big inspiration on Shift, I think, moving forward, is that instead of writing 10,000 words about a world, we'll give you the building blocks to play in that world, and let those puzzle pieces sort of describe the setting to you. Yeah, hard is great.
Yeah.
That's a great recommendation. Thank you so much. Yes, thank you again to both of you for coming on, and really excited to see the crowdfunded take place in October. If you're listening or watching and it's of any interest to you, if you click follow on the Kickstarter page, that will be really, really helpful, because not only will you be notified when it's launched, it also helps other people find it and see the game as well. Also, thank you for watching and listening. We'll be back next week with another indie tabletop RPG to share with you. So if you're interested in learning about games that are not D&D, you can listen to this podcast that we come out every week. But for now, I think that's all. So I'll say thank you very much and goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you.